Hey guys, this is Carla Bongera and welcome to my channel. One of my favorite genres of music is video game music and chiptune in general. I could literally, and sometimes do quite literally, spend hours a day listening to video game soundtracks. Now, I've been wanting to do a video for quite some time on my favorite video game tracks of all time, and I figured today's just about as good a day as any to do it. I also want to point out that these are just my personal favorite video game tracks, and that I didn't intend for them to originally be retro, but that's kind of what it ended up turning out to be. Having said that, if it turns out you guys actually like what I'm doing here, I might just go ahead and release a few more follow-up videos, since there's a lot of video game tracks that I like, both new and old, that are amazing. Now, my love of video games developed at a pretty early age, from pretty much the moment that I was handed my very first video game, which, if any of you guys were wondering, was the original Legend of Zelda on the gold cartridge for the NES. And the songs that are on this list evoke a really strong nostalgic feeling that bring me back to being a wee little tot glued to the TV screen for hours on end. So without any further ado, let's just jump into it. Number 5 on my list is Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 64. One of my favorite games of all time is Mario Kart 64, guys. I spent an ungodly amount of time playing Mario Kart 64. Even though I'm not much of a racing game fan, never was, never will be, with the exception of the Mario Kart franchise and Road Rash. There is something so magical about this particular track, and let's just face it, Rainbow Road is one of the most iconic MK tracks of all time. Plus, what other track is going to evoke that feeling of sheer badassery you felt when you first nailed that secret jump that landed you clear across the other side of the track? Come on now. Number 4 on my list is Super Mario Bros. 2 Overworld theme. Contrary to what most people have experienced, my very first experience with a Mario Bros. Game wasn't the original. It was in fact Mario Bros. 2. And this game in particular holds a very special place in my heart for quite a few reasons. Not only was it my first Mario Bros. Title, and that's always kind of a special thing, it was also the very first game in which I encountered my absolute obsession for Princess Peach. If you guys know anything about me, you guys know that I'm absolutely obsessed with Princess Peach. And I know that she tends to carry a negative connotation among women in general because of the damsel in distress trope. And while I get that, that wasn't my first imagery of her. Super Mario Bros. 2 was the very first video game in which I saw a woman as a playable character in general. And to me at least, she's always been a shining beacon to the fact that women in video games is an actual thing. And let's just be honest here, she was kind of the best character in that entire game. What with her floating superpowers and whatnot. Just saying. So, having said that, Super Mario Bros. 2 Overworld theme is not only a really catchy tune that brings me straight back to my childhood, it reminds me of that awe I felt when I first saw Princess Peach in a video game. Number 3 is the Legend of Zelda Overworld theme. I mean, you knew this one was coming. Given that I told you guys that the original Legend of Zelda on the gold cartridge was my very first video game, I don't really think this one needs much explanation. It's the very first video game soundtrack I ever heard, and it's synonymous with the exact moment that I fell irreversibly in love with video games. Nothing can come close to that. Number 2 on my list is Donkey Kong Country's Aquatic Ambiance. Donkey Kong Country on the SNES is one of my favorite video games of all time. And I know that I've said this for almost every one of these games on my list, but it's kinda true. It was the very first video game in which I can quantifiably argue that I kicked major amounts of ass at. I knew every single secret, I knew every single hidden cave. I know that game intimately, pixel by pixel. To this day, no matter how long it's been since I've played, muscle memory automatically kicks in and I could just barrel through level by level. Let me tell you something. I am competitive as hell, and Donkey Kong Country was the first game that made me actually feel accomplished. That game made me feel that I could be good at something that was primarily viewed as a boy's pastime. The entire Donkey Kong Country soundtrack was pure genius, but Aquatic Ambiance managed to do something that a lot of games hadn't quite nailed yet at that time. It wasn't a crazy, peppy, upbeat video game soundtrack like most of the tracks out there at that time. It was calm, soothing, and above all, it was very catchy. And of course, number 1 on my list is Green Hill Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog. The video game system that I played hands down the absolute most when I was a child was the Sega Genesis. And my absolute favorite video game? Sonic the Hedgehog. It's hard to explain how ardently I fell in love with the blue blur, especially because I've never been exceptionally good at any of the Sonic games. But I was inexplicably addicted. The colorful levels and the speed and sass coming out of that blue hedgehog, that was my jam all day long. I couldn't get enough of Sonic the Hedgehog, and the hours I spent playing that game and subsequently failing math are proof of exactly that. But really, kids, you should do good in school and stuff. I mean it. The Green Hill Zone theme does something to me in ways that no other video game soundtrack can or ever will. It is hands down my absolute favorite video game track of all time. And as an honorable mention, just because I love the song so much, is Song of Storms from Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Why? Well, because it's ethereal. It makes me feel whimsical and magical and mysterious all at the same time. The Legend of Zelda series has great musical gems like the Great Fairy theme and the Kokiri Forest theme, among many others. But the most soulful, in my opinion, of the LOZ tracks? Song of Storms. Hands down. Alrighty kids, well that does it for today's video. What are your favorite video game tracks? Do you agree with mine? Definitely let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video and you want me to do more of these, make sure to hit the like button. And if you're new here and haven't ever seen my channel and like what I happen to be doing here, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. I'm going to be developing a schedule, probably within the next week or so, as to when my videos will release. But until then, if you're on social media and you wish to follow my shenanigans, I'll post the links in my description below. And until next time, keep fun gaming.